everyone out there. This is Cara Cowan Watts, and this is Cherokee 411 with Cara. We're back with Chief Chad Smith. Chad's going to share with us his historical context and background, legal framework around the United Keetoowah Band of Cherokee Indians in Tahlequah. You're familiar with Chad, so we're not going to mince words. I'm going to let him dive straight in and give us this brief background on the Keetoowahs. Please go ahead, Chad.
Thank you. There's a recent controversy, and it's been stirring for 20 years, that whether the United Keetoowah Band of Cherokee Indians in Oklahoma, UKB, is a successor to the Cherokee Nation. The theory or the myth is that two Cherokee nations, UKB and the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. Well, there's not. There's only one Cherokee Nation. There's only one territory of the Cherokee, and that is within the jurisdiction and authority of the Cherokee. And there's another case that's been popping up, is that where the UKB police have authority to criminal law. There was a DUI case that was thrown out based on I think the proper legal theory. They didn't have police authority within the Cherokee. So the real question is, how did this myth that the UKB is a successor in interest or there's two Cherokee nations? You just go back to basic history. People sometimes don't appreciate what Keetoowah means. You listen to Benny Smith, and he's got a chapter in my book. Keetoowah is a philosophy. I don't know if the Cherokees would talk about it as a religion, but it's a philosophy. It's a way of life. It's been that way since time immemorial. Keetoowah became a more popular word after the American Civil War, because in 1859, Keetoowah Indians, as they call themselves, the more traditional folks, came together and created an organization called the Keetoowah Society. Well, parts of that group, and it's pretty much a grassroots, loose organization, got politically involved in principal chief and other elections up until Oklahoma statehood. And then that group pretty much dissolved and splintered into Keetoowah Society Incorporated, at a federal charter, political organization. And then the Nighthawk Keetoowahs, which led by Redbird Smith, was really the social religious group of the Cherokee Nation. They were at Black Gum, then later at Vian. And they disavowed any political involvement. They just didn't get involved. Theirs was purely a cultural effort. United Keetoowah, the Keetoowah Society Inc., tried to protect the tribe's interest. It wasn't a very strong organization. It, in essence, dissolved by 1920. So between 1920 and 1975, with the Cherokee's new constitution, there really wasn't a strong, recognized tribal government. Poverty was rampant. The depression hit the Cherokees as hard as anybody. Half the population left Oklahoma on the infamous Grapes of Wrath in the 1930s, ending up in Bakersfield, California, and upstate Washington. It's hard for us to imagine how dire the economic situation was for Cherokees between statehood and the 1970s. So it created a void. And this group of Cherokee traditionalists or grassroots folks, they were desperately trying to find ways to help themselves and their neighbors. 1936, the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act was passed and allowed groups of Indians to organize, take advantage of loan programs, grant programs, economic programs. So a group of these grassroots Indians, Cherokees, they tried to organize under the OIWA. Solicitor said, "You're not a separate part of the Cherokee Nation. have no authority to organize it. So they went to the Oklahoma delegation, congressmen and senators from Oklahoma, who shared the concern about the poverty within 5 tribes. And so they got Congress to pass a little one sentence act saying the Keetoowah Indians, the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, can organize under the OIWA. So that gave them the authority to apply for these grants and loan programs. At no point did they ever think they were the government of the Cherokee Nation, ever. So it took them 4 years after getting that grant to organize, to adopt a constitution and bylaws, and they changed their name uh, and coalesced with their role as the United Keetoowah Band, Cherokee Indians in Oklahoma. Even in their title, they're not a separate group. They're a band, Cherokee Indians in Oklahoma. My grandmother, Rachel Quinton, was a secretary of the order for years and years and years. It went on, it got some grants, it got some loans, and by 1960, pretty much defunct. Members of the band had to go to the BIA and say, what do? We don't have meetings, we don't have minutes, we're not doing anything, we can't even have an election. How do we get back on our feet? And after a couple of years, the Bureau helped UKB folks hold an election, basically reorganize it. Well, that went along until 1975 when Ross Swimmer was elected principal. Uh, and members of the UKB ran for Cherokee Nation officers. In the next election, they went over and became officers of the UKB, and they became somewhat of a dissident, antagonistic splinter. Uh, and by that time, the Cherokee Nation was actually getting back on its feet. Got the 1975 Constitution. Cases had been won that showed that the Bureau of Indian Affairs had no authority over the tribes. There was the Self-Determination Act passed, allowed tribes to get money for run these programs. UKB wasn't part of that growth. The nation was. So it was a smoke shop wars in the early 1990s that the UK members of the UKB or other folks wanted to run smoke shops, trust restricted, and it got out of control, selling to minors, the kind of crimes. So the Cherokee Nation under Wilma Mankiller said, these are things that we should be regulating. And so it was a conflict. The conflict was ultimately decided in federal court that the Cherokee Nation had jurisdiction over all the territories in the Cherokee Nation boundaries and not the UK. Well, but during that period of time, there was the evolution of this myth that the UKB were successors in interest to the old Cherokee Nation, that the Cherokee Nation had died, according to the 5 Tribes Act of 1906. And they were a successor. And then when the Cherokee Nation got a 75 Constitution, it was also a successor, and they would like to call the Cherokee Nation C in Cherokee Nation, Oklahoma CNO. That's nonsense. 1906 5 Tribes Act continued the Cherokee Nation in full force effect. When we begin to look at the documents, Cherokee UKB never existed before 1950. They're claimed to be descendants of the old settlers is really also factually inconceivable. Well, all of us have descendants, ancestors that enrolled. You go to enroll as a UKB member, you don't have to prove back an old settler. Just no connection, legal, anthropologically, uh, by blood, between members of the UKB and the old settlers. Even if there were, if you look at the Act of Union in 1839, Cherokee Nation, its political subdivisions, Ross Party and the Treaty Party. Then the Western Cherokee, sometimes called the Old Settlers, had an Act of Union. Basically, what evolved out of that Act of Union is only one Cherokee Nation. And the Western Cherokees of the Old Settlers became defunct. They acknowledged they became and were part of the Cherokee. The 1846 treaty, which these factions again came together after a lot of turmoil resulting from the removal, and again said there's only one Cherokee Nation. And old settlers and Treaty Party, the Ross Party, all again agreed federal treaty with the feds. One Cherokee Nation, the Cherokee. That has never changed. And if you go back, we've got 27 treaties with Great Britain in the United States, 47 land cessions. Not one place where you'll ever see the name Keetoowah or the United Keetoowah Band, because they didn't exist. You look at the fee patent, it's not to the United Keetoowah Band or the Keetoowahs, it's to the Cherokee Nation. The Arkansas Riverbed won in the 1960s. That's Cherokee Nation, not the UKB. So history in every document shows that the UKB did not exist in 1950. They are a federally recognized tribe because Congress allowed them to be so. Cherokee Nation has its legal foundations from time immemorial. These 25 treaties recognized in the world community, not by federal statute. So the idea that they're a successor in interest, the idea that they're really distinct from the Cherokee Nation, because we all have the same ancestors. And in fact, their base role is the Cherokee Nation Dawes Commission. Um, so there's great people at the UKB. There's reasons that they left the Cherokee Nation. And some of them are very legitimate because they have maintained a greater sense of cultural identity. But the legal theories, their successor in interest, have any claim, right, or interest in the Cherokee Nation proper territory, fatally flawed. And, I'm not too sure how you resolve it. Can't resolve it until you accept historical record.
So, Chief Smith, just to give folks, you've given the context about your family histories with the United Keetoowah Band of Cherokee Indians in Oklahoma. So, just for the listeners, I am a descendant of Chief Rogers, which was the last elected chief of the Western Cherokees. So, both my maternal grandparents, we are old settlers. To my knowledge, I have not descended from anyone that came on the Trail of Tears. All my folks came early and are considered old settlers. So, just to give you an idea of how complicated like this is, the what you reach out, but it's we all have ties, like you said, to this um, historical record we know from our own family histories. Um, and then you've laid that out really well. So I told you before we got started, but not our listeners. We will be inviting the United Keetoowah Band folks to come on record. We'll be inviting some of the current elected officials of the Cherokee Nation to also come on record on this issue, as well as other issues we're covering. Chief Smith, did you want to add anything else about the United Keetoowah Band before we sign off today for our listeners?
Um,
Okay, there's a lot to cover. I mean, this was days and hours when you taught the history course and developed the history course for us back in the day. So I hate that we're cutting all these things short, but we know that our listeners will only take so much at one time of very complicated, important issues. And one more time, you talk about this in your book, right? What chapters do you cover this in your book?
It'll be chapter 7. There's few pages about the history and really trying to capture their character in the 1960s, 1970s. That set the predicate for this sometimes bitter division.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you again for your time and all the energy and the effort and the incredible wisdom and the things you bring to the table. This is everyone. This is Chief Chad Smith. We're excited to have him back. But thank you for listening, and we will see you again. This is Cara Callan Watts signing off with Chief Chad Smith at Cherokee 411 with Cara. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Join the conversation. Discover stories and insights that matter to you. Subscribe to Cherokee 411 with Cara and stay connected with independent media, real, relevant, and unfiltered.